It's called Good Things and God Things. John 14. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And whither I go you know, and the way you know. Thomas said unto him, Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? I love Thomas. Jesus said to him, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. This has been in my spirit for weeks. Jesus has taken his disciples away from the multitudes. And for the last several chapters in the book of John, he begins to teach them the deep truths of the Spirit right before his crucifixion. This teaching has been confused by Christianity. This is actually kingdom teaching that Jesus is teaching. He's not trying to give them a pep talk about heaven. Christianity for years, and I've been in it for several, has said that, or has thought and has preached that this was, Jesus was talking to them about heaven, and that they had no idea that this is actually about the kingdom. Look at verse 2 again. I know we said about this a couple of weeks ago. Did I forget that one, Steve?
It's all right.
So, I do that too. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. In my Father's kingdom, this is the literal translation of many positions. In my Father's kingdom, there are many positions. In my Father's kingdom, it's not like there's a lot of houses. There are many positions. Literal, that's the translation. There are many rooms. And it literally, if we were thinking in today's way of corporate thought, he literally was saying this. In my Father's kingdom, there are many levels or positions to advance to. That's what Jesus was saying. Much room for advancement. Jesus wasn't going to heaven to build you a house. He was going to the cross. And there was a reason Jesus went to the cross. And I know Christianity taught you it was for your personal sin, and that you were the only sinner on the earth, that Jesus would have gone to the cross for you, which is the narcissistic way that you've been taught. It's absolutely not true. It's just what you've been taught. Jesus was going to the cross, and the reason he was going, the main reason, was to reopen access to the Father's kingdom. That is the reason, number one, why Jesus went to the cross. What is the thing in the kingdom? What is that one thing in the kingdom that we should desperately fight for? Look at Genesis, starting in verse 22 in chapter 3. And the Lord said, Behold, the man has become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore, the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Remember, the garden was a type of the kingdom. It's a type. Adam had continual access to the tree of life while he was in the kingdom. While he was in the kingdom, he had access. How many understand there is a vital reason to re-enter the kingdom? While he's in the kingdom, and only at that time, did he have access to the tree of life. When Adam obeyed Eve, which was his soulish side, he lost access to the tree of life. When Jesus died, his death reopened access to the tree of life, to the spirit man. But before we cheer, we've got to realize that even though something has been made accessible, it doesn't mean that we've accessed it. I know that you've heard for years that Jesus is the tree of life, but the Bible is very specific in the book of Revelation that the tree of life is once again in the kingdom. And it's talking about a literal tree with fruit, whatever that is. I'm not saying it's apples. Just saying. What is the one thing that keeps the tree of life just out of reach from every believer? How many would know if you could change one thing in your life and you could access the tree of life again, and you would have continual life like Adam did in the garden, continual fellowship in the presence and the face of God, that you would change that one thing you would desperately seek to change that one thing in your life that keeps you from accessing the tree of life? How many would just give up whatever it was? Look at verse 22 again. One thing. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become as one of us to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take of the tree of life and eat and live forever. To know good and evil. The word to know is a word to be aware, to be familiar with, to discern, to be skilled in the understanding of, to give and have knowledge and regard for, to see and to consider good and evil. How many are aware of good and evil? All around the world, there are schools that specialize in the teaching of the knowledge of good and evil. These schools of taught thought are known as churches. They teach the knowledge of good and evil. Would it shock you to know that the place where Christians gather to learn the ways of the Spirit are actually the greatest hindrance to any type of spiritual growth whatsoever? What a great hiding place, huh? If you're going to hide it, you hide it out in the open. Churches have become cafeterias for the hungry souls of believers. A veritable smorgasbord of soulish knowledge, effectively keeping the tree of life out of the reach of every believer. The only reason God said, and I will remove him from the garden, is now that he knows good and evil, he will put forth his hand to the tree of life. By his own works, he will acquire the tree of life. Isn't it amazing that as long as Eve, which was Adam's soulish side, remained in Adam, the spirit side, the serpent had no ability to come against Adam. As long as she was part of him, his side, the serpent had absolutely never even shown up. Isn't it amazing that the serpent is never even mentioned until the soulish side is exposed? How many understand that the devil is not the enemy of the spirit man? Literally, he has no access to the spirit man except through the soul. That's an amazing thought when you stop and consider that Satan has no access to you whatsoever in your spirit. He has to come by way of your soul. Your soul is in cahoots with the devil to keep you as far from the tree of life as possible. Albeit unwittingly, the soul doesn't realize that. The soul's just trying to be as good as it can. It's trying to just doing the best I can do. How many understand that your soul is a powerful influence? Why is your soul such a powerful influence? Because everything that you feel comes from your soul. Everything that you feel. How many have feelings? 100%, don't we? You deal with feelings daily, don't you? Daily, there's got to be something. That is not your spirit man. If you ever hear somebody say, I felt in my spirit, Your soul, the only one that could feel in his spirit was Jesus. He was the spirit man that had access to the tree of life. Jesus said, I am life. I am the way. How many understand also that when Jesus said, I'm the way, it wasn't a generic way. He wasn't trying to say, this is the way. He was saying, I'm the way for you, and I'm the way for you, and I'm the way for you, and I'm the way for you. I'm your way, I'm your way, I'm your way. The church has made it a very generic way and said, follow this. This is the way. Now, Jesus is saying, I am the way personally for you. I'm your way. The church says that he's a personal Savior, but they don't really believe that he is. They believe that he's the corporate Savior. Everything you feel comes through the soul. Look at John 16, verse 12. I have yet many things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now. Jesus is saying this to his disciples. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. This is literally the way that God designed for the spiritual man to walk. The spiritual man was always to walk according to the hearing of the Spirit. But sadly, the church didn't choose the Spirit way, but the church chose the way of the soul, which is what? The knowledge of good and evil. How many know it's easier? How many understand that people inherit, even children know good from evil? You don't have to teach a child to lie. A child knows how to lie. Children are liars. They're horrible little liars. Is that true? It's absolutely true. I raised several of them myself. Several little liars. I didn't hear it, but I'm not saying. What did it say? It came down to the bloodline? See, it came through the bloodline. The church chose the way of the knowledge of good and evil. And so they taught that way. And that way is what keeps every one of you from accessing the tree of life. And Jesus came to reopen. Christianity is filled with preachers and teachers telling you how to train your soul to be successful. Everybody wants a soul that's successful. The power of positive thinking, the power of positive speaking are both taught by the church and by the world's motivational speakers. How many understand that that's true? You can go to any kind of motivational speaker, and they, no matter if they're Christian or non-Christian, and they will tell you the exact same thing. Why? Because it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. You've got to understand this point. No matter how well you train your soul, or how successful your soul makes you become, it can never, ever, ever, did I say ever? Ever make you spiritual. It has no ability, no matter how well you train your soul, it has no ability to access the spirit realm. It can't make you spiritual. No matter how good you become, it won't make you spiritual. It may make you prosperous. It may make you healthy. It may make you successful in all you do in life, but it doesn't have the slightest potential to ever make you Christ-like. It can't. It is as far removed from Christ as the East is from the West. Your soul. I've heard multitudes of so-called faith preachers, and when I say faith preachers, say things like, you've got to speak it until you believe it. I heard this so much teaching when I was growing up. I studied it. I took Rhema Bible course. And they told me, if you speak it until you believe it, you will receive it. How many have ever heard that saying? If you speak it, you've got, why don't you believe it? Because I didn't speak it enough. So I got to speak it until I believe it, until I get it. Is it true that you can speak until you believe something and then you'll possess it? Wait a minute. Yes, it is true. Is it truth? No. It's true, but it's not truth. The Spirit doesn't have to be convinced or doesn't have to be led to believe something. The soul has to be led to believe something. When the soul believes it, the soul being a very powerful influence. People always say about the Jewish people, and many of them are very prosperous, very wealthy, and they had given for many years, and now they're very wealthy, and they've received that. Well, is there a law that states if you give, you receive? Yes. Can it be accessed by anybody? Absolutely. A person who is very generous, doesn't matter if they're a believer or not a believer, when they're very generous, it just seems like things come back to them. How many know that's true? It's true. A person who's very positive, speaks very positive things about their body. How many understand that? Scientists even say this. If you speak very positive things about your body, it does something to the molecular structure to rearrange and create a healthy body. And all of a sudden you walk in a greater health because of what your words were. How many know that's absolutely true? It's proven by science to be true. It's not a Christian thing. It's a scientific thing. But there's a difference between true and truth. True is something that the soul can access. Absolutely, the soul has access to the things that are true. Your soul is powerful and has the potential to make you wildly successful in the natural realm. How many have ever thought, what if I won the lottery? Has anybody ever thought that once? I've had 100 people say, Dan, if I win the lottery, I'm building a church. But I have the unluckiest following in the entire world. You got to play to win. Your soul is powerful, and it can make you wildly successful in the natural realm. But there's a vast difference between true and truth, and there's a vast difference between the soul and the spirit. Look what God said through Isaiah in Isaiah 55. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Is he speaking to godly people, or is he speaking to worldly people? Okay, godly. Here's a hint. Godly. He's speaking to people who follow him, isn't he? That's who he's speaking to. The prophecy is to followers. And he's talking to followers when he's saying, your ways don't look anything like my ways. You think things that are nothing like the way I think. Why? Because you're soulish. You're thinking the ways of your soul. The ways of God are spiritual ways. The ways of the soul are natural ways. The ways of God are unattainable except through grace or God's divine influence. The only way the Spirit can access anything is by the influence of God, by God's divine influence, the grace of God. The ways of the soul can be fought for and eventually possessed. If you want it, how many have ever heard? If you want something bad enough, you can have it. How many have ever heard that saying before? Everybody here. If you want something bad enough, you can get it. You can have it. Why? Because the soul is overwhelmingly powerful and influential. And it can get what it desires. And it can eventually possess them. But the ways of the Spirit cannot be possessed, only followed. The ways of the Spirit cannot be possessed, only followed. The highways of the soul are very good and noble and desirable. Are the ways of the soul, the highways, good? Yes. Are they noble? Absolutely. Are they desirable? I assure you. They include things like character, morality, courage, integrity, wisdom of the world, things like that. They are all good, they're wonderful, and they're positive things, but that doesn't make them spiritual things. Character is good, but it doesn't make it spiritual. Integrity is great, but it doesn't make it spiritual. How many have known worldly men and women who possessed great morality, tremendous character, or courage? Every one of us have. Why? Because they're not spiritual things. They're soulish things. They're things I train my soul. They come from a very refined soul. This is why your soul is such a powerful force. How many know it's your soul? You can tell if somebody sees something. It's just like I preached last week. If you see something if I see something in your face, and I say there's something on your face, and you say, no, there's not. Yeah, there just is. No, there's not. I don't believe it. The soul denies. It's the part of you that goes, that's not true. Well, without understanding, it will always say, that's not true. I don't believe that. I don't agree with that. It has the ability, your soul, to influence entire nations. The soul of man can influence. How many know somebody as evil as Adolf Hitler had the ability, with a passionate soul, to influence an entire nation? Why? Because the soul is powerful. Remember what Jeremiah 17, verse 9 said. The heart is deceitful above all things. It's desperately wicked. You have no ability to know your soul. The heart leads by feelings. This makes your heart your soul. Everybody says, no, my soul. Yes, your soul makes it incurably, spiritually blind and deaf. And as your soul increases its influence, all potential for the Spirit decreases. As your soul increases its influence, believe it or not, nobody here accesses the tree of life. Nobody. Nobody in this planet accesses the tree of life. So guess what? There is a higher way. And as the soul of man increases its influence, all potential for the Spirit decreases. Your soul is literally a veil that covers your spirit. Did it ever occur to you that literally nothing spiritual will ever occur to you? Did it ever occur to you that literally nothing spiritual will ever occur to you? You have no opportunity. Why? Because you hear from your soul. If you walked in the spirit realm, you would access the tree of life. And everywhere you went, there would be life. You wouldn't have to talk about it. It would happen. You wouldn't have to prove it by your words. You'd never have to argue. It would just happen. Just like it did when Jesus walked into funerals and they became a birthing room. Dead people had life again. Jesus accessed the spirit realm. The church has yet to access the spirit realm. Jeremiah said that our souls are incurably frail, woefully feeble. Jesus actually said the same thing to Peter in Mark 14:38. Watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. This is what he said. The spirit is ready, but the flesh is weak. The word weak that Jesus used here did not mean powerless. We like to think as Christians that we're strong when it comes to sinful behavior. We're not weak like carnal men. This isn't what he was talking about. It wasn't what Jesus was saying. Because we get proud when we've overcome some kind of carnal, what we consider carnal, sinful behavior, weakness. That's not what Jesus was saying. He was actually prophesying over Peter here. Peter represents the church. And Jesus was literally prophesying. He declares the flesh is weak. It literally translates the same as when Jeremiah said the heart is deceitful. The heart or the soul is deceitful. Jesus knew that the soulless church would eventually become the sleeping church. That's what he was saying. The soulless church. The soulless. When your soul is awake, when your soul is separated from Christ, from Adam, all of a sudden, your soul is vulnerable to the temptation of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Jesus knew that the soulless church would fall asleep again. This warning was missed, and it was completely unheeded by the church. A spiritually sleeping church is vulnerable and unaware and ineffective. How many would hate to be found sleeping when your enemy came? A spiritually asleep church becomes very civic-minded, very community-minded. A spiritually asleep church is focused on the morality of society. They want to live in a moral society driven by the knowledge of good and evil. A spiritually asleep church has a change the world vision. How many know Jesus wasn't like that? Jesus was here preaching the kingdom. He wasn't preaching to sinners saying, you need to stop doing that. Why are you acting like that? What's the matter with you? Did I say you could drink that? They're all good, noble things. When the church puts their soul to changing things, they become good and they become noble things. But are they God things? Look at Jeremiah 17:9 again. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? The heart is deceitful when it is above all things. That's literally what he said. The soul is a dark veil over the face of the Spirit when the soul is above all. When it inhabits the high place of influence. When your soul is the most influential part. See, if you saw your spirit man, it's almost like your spirit man is withdrawn when the soul becomes strong. It's like the stronger your soul becomes, the more your spirit man just goes, okay, go ahead. It's shocking. The more you see it, the more you understand. Jesus was saying that the soul is weak, but the soul is easily led by the knowledge of good and evil. That's the weakness of the soul. That's the blindness of the soul. The soul is a dark veil above all when it inhabits the high place of influence. When the soul inhabits the high place of influence, there is no spiritual discernment potential whatsoever. None. You have no ability to understand spiritually when your soul inhabits the high places of your thought process. It's like going grocery shopping when you're hungry. The influences too. How many have ever gone grocery shopping while you're hungry? Don't. You buy things you don't need. Oh, we'll buy this candy and this chips, and oh man, look at all these treasures. Yeah, and always ice cream. Well, that's a staple. How many have ever given something to someone because you pitied those that you were giving to? And then you said, the Spirit of God told me to give it to them. And you absolutely believe this is true because your soul feels a witness and the Spirit is guiding you. But you got to remember this, God doesn't work with the soul. God doesn't work with your soul. It's the Esau that he hated. God doesn't work with your soul. Refuses to, will not, backs away. It's like Saul. Yeah, I can't work with him. Didn't he? God was looking for a man after his heart. How many know if you look at Saul's record, Saul was impeccable compared to David's record. Had nothing to do with that, did it? It was the fact that David was a spirit man and Saul was the picture of a soulish man. And God looked at Saul and said to Samuel, he said, tell Saul he's done. I can't work with him. I have no ability. I've proven it over and over, but I have no ability to work with him. So God doesn't work with your soul. Your soul is the proud that God resists. The part of you that stands up, that God resists. Look at Genesis 4, starting in verse 1. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived. There Canaan said, I've gotten a man from the Lord, and she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firsting of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. Cain was very wroth, he was angry, his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you wroth? And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, shall you not be accepted? If you don't do well, sin lies at the door, and thou shalt be his desire. Thou shalt rule over him. Cain talked with Abel, his brother, and it came to pass. When they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, slew him. And the Lord said to Cain, where's Abel, your brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries unto me from the ground. And now you're cursed from the earth, which has opened your mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall not from now on yield unto your strength. A fugitive and a vagabond you will be in the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. Shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that finds me shall slay me. Cain and Abel were a type of not the soul and the spirit, but your soul and your spirit. It's personal. That makes God a personal God. He's showing you something personally. This isn't about somebody beside you. I'd make you say, it's about me, not about you. But we're not in the Pentecostal church anymore. Cain and Abel were a type of your soul, your spirit. It's interesting that in the Adam and Eve scenario, and I never thought of this, Adam was the spirit man, and he was the firstborn, wasn't he? And then came Eve, the soul. But after the fall, everyone became the soul and then the spirit. It changed positions. The soul was always the firstborn. It started Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, Esau and Jacob, Saul and David. Cain is a tiller of the ground. He's just like the prodigal's older brother. It's the part of you that's the tiller of the ground. This is talking about your soul. It's the prodigal's older brother. The ground always represents the carnal side. He's a tiller of the carnal side. Tiller is a servant or one who's kept in bondage. A servant to the carnal side, to the knowledge of good and evil. Kept in bondage to... How many have ever been in bondage to the knowledge of good and evil? Nobody. Liars. But we're all one that way. A servant always obeys the voice of authority. A servant obeys the voice that it recognizes as authority. Your servant part, your soulish Cain part, recognizes the voice of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the authority over the soul. You've never heard this, and it's so good. What's the voice that drives the soul? One of the voices that continually drive your soul is ambition. How many know your soul is ambitious? How many have ever had dreams and goals, desires, you seek for your purpose? If you ever hear a preacher say, pursue your dreams, or search to fulfill your purpose, or aim for your goals, get up and walk out. He's preaching to your ambitious, narcissistic soul. He has nothing to do with the spirit realm. You're in a school of thought where you will learn the knowledge of good and evil and how to prosper your soul. Your soul drives you desperately to attempt to succeed in this life. Is that a good thing? Absolutely. Is it a God thing? Yeah. It's a good thing to be successful, but is it God? Your soul is desperately wicked, incurably blind and deaf. Your soul is dream-driven and goal-oriented. Your soul's ambitious. It's desperate to fulfill its own purpose. We used to come up and people would say, come up and prophesy over me, Brother Dan. prophesy over me what God's will is for me. I know God's got a call on my life. I know I have a purpose. The narcissistic side of me is desperate to know that. They didn't say it like that, but that's what they were saying. Tell me how good I can do it, sir. The soul is ambitious. It's desperate to fulfill its purpose. Your soul wants to please God, but it's powerless to ever accomplish that because it wants to do it its own way. I did it my way. Cain brought God his offering. You've got to see this. Your soul, Cain, brings God his offering. Look at verse 3 again. In the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. He was proud of this. The fruit of the ground is the carnal way of your soul. The fruit of the ground. Do they look like bad things to humanity? They look like amazing things. But how many know that God's ways are not the same as our ways? God's thoughts are not the same as our thoughts. What you don't understand is that your soul, as seen by God, is literally a servant of the field desperately working to produce fruit. And it notices when others aren't. The soul produces love. How many know that's true? Absolutely. Have you ever seen a dog? Have you ever seen a dog that literally will die? Have you read stories about a dog that will die because its owner, it loved so well? How many know that's a soul? Well, now you're getting into something really bizarre again. I'm telling you, the soul is the soul. It has no connection with God, just the Spirit. The soul can love. You talk to anybody in the world that's ever been in love, and they'll say, no, it's real. I don't care what you say. I know what love feels like, and this is love. Listen to the songs of the 70s. Those men were in love. I want to know what love is. The soul produces love. The soul produces compassion. The soul produces patience. How many know I've seen people in the world that were much more patient than people who call themselves believers? Have you? The soul can produce patience. The soul can be very kind. The soul has empathy for other people. The soul can produce goodness and understanding and diligence and courage and morality and a multitude of other good, desirable, and beautiful fruit that Christians believe come from God. But it comes from a soul, a very powerful, very influential soul. Look at Genesis 3:6. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave it to her husband who was with her, and he also did eat. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil produces fruit that is pleasant to the eyes. It literally is the word that it is pleasant and charming. Do you know what the word charming means? It means it produces fruit that makes you likable, endearing, attractive, delightful, fascinating, polite, and friendly. That's the soul's fruit. We're not talking about the Spirit. See, the hard thing is for the soul to say, yeah, that could potentially be me. No, I know this came from God. Something in us is drawn to people who are charming and attractive. How many have ever known somebody who's charming and attractive? Not me, I'm bitter and mean. Nothing charming about this guy. People who are happy and humorous and friendly and generous, and even-tempered are always pleasant to the eyes of our Eve. That's an amazing thought. Our soul, our soulish side, like Cain, like Eve's side, is driven to appear this way because we want people to find us attractive. How many can act attractive from people? How many want others to perceive you as likable? Isn't that a weakness of humanity? We want others to like us, don't we? I literally stood and watched people pour on the charm. Have you? Have you seen it? Their voice changes. I can tell when a man's talking to a woman on the phone. He's talking to one of the guys. All of a sudden, hey, how are you? How many have ever heard it? I've heard women do the same thing. Talk to their husbands. Yeah, and then another guy goes, hey, what's going on? It's the pouring on the charm of the soul. Their facial expression changes. All of a sudden, they look like everything matters. Everything you say is perfect. Have you ever seen it? I have. I've never not seen it. They look at the other person like they've met the most interesting person they've ever met. They laugh at everything. Everything's funny. Oh, you're hilarious. Oh. You know what it's called? It's a beautiful hypocrisy. The pretense of the soulish realm. Beautiful hypocrisy. Look at Genesis 4, 3, and 5. In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord, and Abel. He also brought of the firstling of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering. You've got to see this. You'll never escape the soul's influence. If you don't see this, this is your key to success. Unto Cain and his offering, God has no respect. Cain was sure his stuff was beautiful. I'm sure the neighbors went by and went, wow, what a garden. It was beautiful. His stuff was perfect. He picked the best. You can bet he took hours picking the best for God. He wasn't offering God junk. We always think Cain, God, rotten Cain. Yeah. He was picking the best he had. It was all he had. It was his love, his goodness. It was his happiness, his friendliness. It was everything that made him likable. And he was offering it to God. Your Cain side believes that this pretense will still work with God too. Your Cain side does. Just as much as this Cain believed it, your Cain believes it. But no matter how beautiful your offering appears to you and to everyone that knows you, God isn't interested at all. Your soulish love, your soulish kindness, your soulish good ways hold absolutely no attraction for the God of the spirit realm. Verse 5 says that God had no respect for Cain's way. It literally means this. This is the literal Hebrew translation. The word respect means God was bewildered and disturbed and confused and surprised when he saw what Cain was offering him. God was like, what? What's this? You thought that you could please me with? I don't get it. That's exactly what it means. God said, wow, I can't believe that you thought that. He literally refused to even look at it or even consider it. When God looked at Cain's stuff, it was absolute rejection. How many have a soul that hates rejection? There's not a person here that doesn't hate rejection. Everybody hates rejection. It's such a deep part of who we are. You want people to like you. You don't want to be rejected. Your soul hates rejection. In fact, your soul fears rejection. Your soul will always, always, always react to rejection. And not all souls react alike. Everybody goes, oh, I don't feel rejected because I don't react like that. Not all souls act alike or react alike. Some souls become bitter and resentful. How many have ever been bitter and resentful when you were rejected? Some souls violently reject the ones that reject them. Well, if you're going to reject me, then who needs you? Some souls become what is known as passive-aggressive when they feel the sting of rejection. If you study passive-aggressive in psychology, how many ever study psychology? How many like to know the way the mind thinks? It's true. There are ways of the mind. There are paths. There is a way of the mind called passive-aggressive. These types of souls feel that anger is wrong. This is literally out of Wikipedia. Passive-aggressive souls feel that anger is wrong, so they compensate for anger. And they automatically switch to what is known as a passive or a neutral response. Instead of becoming angry or violent, they become passive, what is known as passive-aggressive, or a passive-neutral response. When their soul feels rejection, they say things like, it's fine. They don't like me, whatever, it's fine. And that's one of them, they say, these are the literal words that the soul says. It's fine, I don't care, whatever, it doesn't matter anyway. Those are the responses of the passive-aggressive. That is part of the soul that feels rejection and goes, doesn't matter, I don't care, doesn't matter anyway, whatever. It's fine. Cain, although all these responses were potential, Cain's soul didn't become that. It became dark and brooding and a menacing darkness, didn't it? Look at verses 6 and 7. I'm almost done. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why are you wroth? And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, won't you be accepted? If you don't do well, sin lies at your door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. This is so deep, and I wish I had spent more time explaining. There is so much here that I'd like to say. What was God saying? If Cain, your soul, my soul, will just surrender and come into quiet agreement with Abel, your spirit, all will be well. That's what he said. He wasn't saying, if you just, do the good thing, do the right thing. Literally, he was saying, if you just surrender your will, your soul's way, and come into agreement with Abel, your spirit, then all will be well. Isn't that good? But sadly, the way of your Cain is proud and self-defending. He will violently defend his beliefs, his opinions, his goodness, and his way of thinking. And what is the end result? Your Cain will always overpower and silence your Abel, who is literally your only true connection with God. That's scary, isn't it? One more verse, Genesis 4:12. Until the ground, God's cursing the soul. It will from now on yield nothing. Will not yield her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall you be in the earth. I'm ending with this. The spiritual disconnection is what caused the church to labor ceaselessly, yet remain spiritually dissatisfied. How many understand that the church has been laboring for thousands of years and is still spiritually dissatisfied? curse of God on the soul. The soulless church is the fugitive and the vagabond of the earth, wandering in a spiritual barren wilderness, driven to do good things while completely unaware of God things, ever seeking, but never finding the entrance to the kingdom